Ryan Parker, who made a beautiful body of wood cuts and printing them with plant dyes. They're just not going to come across on a screen. Shelley Thorstenson uses printmaking because printmaking does something that painting or drawing does not. And that just doesn't translate. You really have to see it. Therefore, we have to support their person. We have to get out there and encourage people to come and look because it's an experience that they can't have sitting at home.
Ron, it is wonderful to see you. I am thrilled that Dolan Maxwell is coming to Baltimore for the print fair. Can you tell people who you are and about Dolan Maxwell?
Of course. Dolan Maxwell was founded in 1984 in Philadelphia, in Center City, Philadelphia, by Margot Dolan and Peter Maxwell. Printmaking is pretty much the spine of what the gallery does. We branch out from that, but previously to opening Dolan Maxwell, Margot Dolan was director at Philadelphia's Print Center, which was the Philadelphia Print Club, which was really one of the most important print organizations in the United States, and it is now 110 years old or something like that. But it did a lot to promote the idea of contemporary printmaking in addition to historic printmaking. Our range of what we do starts about 1930. Another core, as far as the printmaking aspect of our business, is Stanley William Hayter, who famously opened a studio in Paris where he revived intaglio and engraving. He brought that studio to New York in the 1940s during World War II. We operate on the idea that pretty much all printmaking that is made today has roots in that moment in the 1940s in the United States. It all branches out of that because many of the young Americans who worked with him left New York and went to Wisconsin and St. Louis and Iowa City to the universities where they established the printmaking programs that teaches all the current printmaking programs. We had a gallery for about 8 years in Philadelphia and another gallery in New York. We went private in the early 1990s because we realized then that print fairs or art fairs was the way of the future and the best way for us to get art in front of people because it is a purely seeing thing, and if you can't see it, you can't know it. We continue to work with Hayter's estate. Margot Dolan and Peter Maxwell grew to be great friends with Stanley William Hayter and his wife, and we continue to work with his family. And as I said, it branches out from there. We've always been very interested in contemporary printmaking and working directly with artists like Stephen Ford and Cheryl Warwick, Ryan Parker, Shelley Thorstenson, to name just a few of the artists that we'll bring to the Baltimore Print Fair.
Do you guys ever publish?
We have published. It's been about 20 years since we published, and we enjoyed that. We've done projects probably with about 10 different artists. What we found was it was letting artists to themselves as much as possible. So if they're able to generate within their own ambition and power in their own studios, that seems to be a better fit for us rather than us trying to be involved and putting the angle in of, gee, can we sell this? Are we going to get return on our investment? That's something that, of course, plays into it. So as much as it's fun to be involved with a project like that, it's really nice when the artist comes up with something all by themselves, and it's better than something that we might imagine for them.
Yeah, the good point about too much not interference, but involvement, I guess. Yeah. Other voices. Yeah. Have you done the Baltimore Print Fair before?
Glad you asked. We did, I believe, the first two Baltimore print fairs, which would have been in the very early 1990s, like 90 and 91, I think. So we did those two, and then we didn't do it anymore for slightly strange reasons, but it was okay. We said yes instantly because we all loved the idea of a contemporary print fair. Most print fairs they pride themselves on running the gamut, 500 years of print history, and you can get a Rembrandt and on and on and on. We love the idea of it just being contemporary.
Yeah, there aren't very many that limit themselves to contemporary only. That was one of their big talking points because it was unusual. Yeah. It's a different kind of fair. The old master folks always have boxes you need to go through, and the early American people have bins you need to go through. And it's just a different feel, really. I love seeing all of the framed works on the wall. I mean, it's the best exhibition you could ever hope to go see, really. Like hundreds of prints.
Full of surprises.
Right, exactly.
We will have things in portfolios and boxes because some artists make small things, and that allows us to bring a greater range of material. I don't know if maybe we're a little bit different. I instantly thought about, and part of all the conversations that we've been having for 10 plus years, of extending back to prints that are made in my lifetime. So we will have some, maybe even prints from the late 60s and 70s. Again, going back to Hayter and Atelier 17, we'll have a really beautiful etching called Nautilus, and we'll also have the printing plate with it and several state proofs. So again, we always like that kind of, the thing that printmaking is infinitely teachable because we have the examples of the thinking that went into the making of the print. So we'll have some of that. Terry Haas is an artist that was here in the 40s and early 50s at Atelier 17 and then went to Paris to work with Le Courrier, but she always makes very strong, really powerful, forceful etchings and juxtaposes the rich blacks against very bright, strong colors. So we'll have some of her work. Norma Morgan was one of the few African-American artists who worked at Atelier 17. Another prong of our business has become the printmaking history of African-American art. We have a really wonderful online exhibition that we did 2 years ago, hinging off of the artist Robert Blackburn. We'll have some late Robert Blackburn prints.
Those are hard to find, the Blackburn prints. I don't know where they're all hiding somewhere.
I don't know. I don't think the word is that there's not a lot hiding. Deborah Cullen, who did all the work on his estate, I heard from her recently that she thinks that there might only be a total of 350 prints.
Wow.
She doesn't think that he ever got around to printing his editions. So often when he had an opportunity to print, he revisited a stone, visited a block, and changed it up and turned it sideways and printed it again. So I think it's this very limited special body of work. The catalog raisonnés, it's not really a catalog raisonné, the catalog that was done, that she did on him, will have examples of his work, but we found alternate examples that aren't in the catalog, but you can see that he's used the same block. So it also makes it something very difficult to get your arms around.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you remember that when I was at the museum that we acquired 3, right, from you? It was 2 of the lithos and 1 woodcut. Yeah, there were no Blackburns in the Baltimore's collection at that point. None, which is nuts because he's such an important figure.
That also puts you ahead of most museums we're finding, because many are discovering that they don't have any. And it's wonderful to find the overlooked and somebody like Robert Blackburn or artists who work with him. We'll have some prints by a really important African-American painter named Ed Clark. He died, I think, just 2 or 3 years ago, but he made a really interesting body of work in printmaking parallel to his painting practice that ranges from kind of the middle 70s until 1997. There's not a lot of it, but what's there is really quite wonderful and I think important. And nobody has them. It's starting from zero. Who is Ed Clark? It's challenging and exciting.
Well, the ones I've seen that you've had on the walls at previous fairs were really great. Like, it's a no-brainer, honestly, in my mind, anyway.
And the change that we've seen in the last few years, the powerful sort of cultural shift after the George Floyd murder, to everybody suddenly feeling, yes, we thought we were doing a good job at being inclusive and that our collections spoke for everyone. And in fact, they didn't. And the same for art by women artists as well. I first probably started looking at Ed Clark's work 10 years ago, easily 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And they were very inexpensive at the time, and nobody had a stomach for them. Nobody wanted to stretch to include them. Now we're sort of circling back, and it's a little different, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing. Yeah. There's so 70s pristine abstraction. Everything goes in cycles, right? When I first started working on Hader, the people I was working with at the museum were like, ugh, I can't stand that stuff, because that's what they grew up with, And so like the Ed Clark stuff that's the stuff I grew up with. And it's taken me a while to kind of swing back around and go, oh yeah, that stuff is worth looking at. It all takes time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And the idea of cycles and things. I remember there was a time when Hader was so out of fashion, we would debate whether to hang anything at the print fair. And then, easily 20 years ago, we said, you know what, they're just so good. And I remember a dear friend, Roberta Waddell, speaking exactly to what you're saying, coming around and looking at them and looking very carefully and saying, boy, they look really good, don't they? They're just so well made. I think that's part of what people respond to is the hand is there, the mark making, the thinking when you see several impressions of something. That resonated again with, I think, what contemporary practice became again. And so
you know what I've been saying to everybody I've been interviewing, because in general, all of them have studied with somebody who studied with somebody who studied with Hader. And I keep saying, all roads lead back to Hader.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's Anthony Emmons, a contemporary artist that we work with. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he said, well, he's kind of like everybody's grandfather or great-grandfather. And if you're picking up a plate and you're doing something with it, he's in there in some fashion. And not so much emulating a style, or it really is to do with a process and a way to approach. He never wanted anybody to make a drawing and then try to replicate their drawing on a plate. Of course, he's said to have very much influenced Jackson Pollock, because he told people to work from every side. Don't think of it as a top and a bottom and a left and a right, but turn and work it from every direction. The result of that isn't so much that he said this is how you make something, is he said, throw away all your rules, and whatever you do will become a new rule. So take this little test plate and destroy it, abuse it, turn it, wreck it. If you have any inclination that you think is wrong or against your intention, do it anyway. It's just a little piece of copper. Have fun, have at it, and see what happens. And I think that kind of meant people could let go.
Right. When I read about him saying things like that, I keep thinking, like, easy for you to say, Mr. I'm so facile with a Buren, like he could sit down and, like Hector Sonnier can, they just can do the most elegant whipping lines and curves. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even get an inch long line into the plate.
Yeah. No, it's very seductive. And that skill is so admirable.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, that's why so few people do engraving these days, right? Andrew Raftery and David Barthold and Evan Lindquist. Like, how many others are there?
Something to think about. But you mentioned Hector Sonnier. Another, not really a footnote to Atelier 17, is this funny other thing of making prints in plaster. So we will bring a beautiful little plaster of a Hector Sonnier print from, I think, made in the last 20 years. Really beautiful color print. I'm thinking to stretch as much as we can to show as much of the breadth of what we have.
Well, and Ron, I have to say, there are a few galleries that can do both, have a foot in history and a foot in contemporary, and do it well. And I feel like you guys, yes, you're welcome. All right, tell me why you're excited to come to Baltimore, and then we'll sign off.
Back to fairs is something that we're both excited about, and at the same time we're reminded of how much work goes into the fairs, which is enormous. What was fortunate for us through the pandemic was that the historic side of what we do served us very well. We did online exhibitions, we did online art fairs, and they generated conversations and sales of the historic work, because that somehow made sense for people, or it was all the stuff that was already documented on a book level. But what did not do so well was the contemporary art, which is the flip side, the stuff that's new, that's not documented to death. It tends to be larger, maybe not so easily understood on a screen. So what's we realize is that, and especially if it's an artist that you've never seen before, introducing that on a website is fine, but you can't know it the way you can know it by getting your eyes on the prints. And I always tell people my job is to get eyeballs on art in front of people, not on a screen. And what I'm excited about as far as contemporary artists go are somebody like Ryan Parker, who's made a beautiful body of work by making woodcuts and then printing them with plant dyes. They're really rich and really beautiful. Totally seduced by them. They're just not going to come across on a screen. You have to see them. They're extremely tactile. Somebody like Stephen Ford, who does unique works where he uses printmaking because he likes what printmaking does. Shelley Thorstenson uses printmaking because printmaking does something that painting or drawing or sculpting does not. And that just doesn't translate. The nature of what they bring to their work, all of their experiences, you really have to see it. And what in the world these days do you have to see the thing? We're getting into a rarer and experiential corner. Therefore, we have to support fairs, and we have to get out there and encourage people to come and look, because it's an experience that they can't have sitting at home.
True enough. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I'm sure you know that I'm excited. Yeah, I can't wait. It's coming up so fast, and it's going to be over in a blink of an eye, and I'm just going to cry the next day, I'm sure. But it's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to see you in Baltimore.
We are looking forward to being there. We really are. And to see so many friends. The other nice thing about this is a lot of us are familiar traveling companions, and it's like a little kind of family reunion where everybody gets together and catch up and see what's new and share something that everybody's excited to share.
Right, you got it.